welcome everyone to this episode of All the Good Titles Were Taken. I am your host, Drunken Emerald Arrow. This show starts on time, and if it doesn't start on time, it's my own damn fault. I have no guests on this show. It's my solo show, so if I am not here on time, it's my own fault. So let's talk about a few things before we kind of get into the video for this evening. Well, videos, got a couple. Let's see. So I ran it's kind of interesting to find out what's happening there in good old Chicagoland. Now, those that are sports fans have heard, or maybe you haven't heard, that, let's see, trying to find it real quick. The Chicago Bears are leaving Chicago. And the only people they have to blame is their voting. They voted for Democrats that have destroyed the city by constantly having to raise taxes and everything else, and it's just made it that businesses can't function in these cities. I would not be surprised if, come the future, other major cities in especially blue states start losing their teams, because you have, I believe the Bears are now moving to Indiana. Now, granted, still close to Chicago, but they're moving out of Illinois. I would not be surprised with the communist takeover of Seattle, with their board and essentially voting in and electing a communist mayor, that the Seahawks will probably take off eventually too. I mean, that's just kind of the direction things are going in these major cities. I mean, most of the New York, well, not that that's any better. I mean, New York teams don't even play in New York. They're playing in New Jersey, but even New Jersey's become very anti-business, and that's what it is. It's still football's still a business. They're still there to make money, and when they're making policies that are going to tax the rich, you're going to drive out all of the people. So, okay, well, as we start off, this one that we are going to be doing today is from Growing Up in the 90s. I'll just show it off to the side here so you can see. Growing Up in the 90s, coming from Memory Trails. That's actually where we're going to start off on this episode. Let's get this rolling, and we will start it off.
The 1990s were full of little things that made everyday life unforgettable. One moment you could be staring at the Windows Maze screensaver that seemed to go on forever. The next you were sipping on a bottle of Zima with a Jolly Rancher dropped inside. Or worrying about the Y2K panic that had every...
See, I've mentioned that before. The Zima with the Jolly Rancher. One of my exes actually would drink those and put the Jolly Rancher in it. I was never a fan. Not my drink, but of course I really don't drink at all, which is kind of funny because I go by Drunken Emerald Arrow. But I actually, my times of drinking was back when I was in the military. But I do not drink very often, if at all. So there's just no point in it. For me, everyone can enjoy what they want to do themselves, but I am just not a big consumer of alcohol.
Everyone stocking up on supplies. It was a time of bold experiments, strange fads, and memories that still make us smile today. Let's take a walk back and see which of these...
Oh, good old Blockbuster Video. This is just going right back to the whole point of me being a very big advocate for physical media, and the fact that we actually do need to bring physical media back, because that way you actually own it. But one thing that we need to do is actually start pushing for physical media and kind of rebel against the streaming services in the sense of like Netflix. Don't attack all streaming services, obviously, because of YouTube, Rumble, and stuff like that. But that's for new content like this. Stuff you're not going to be able to get in physical media. But when it comes to movies and TV shows, getting that physical media and start buying physical media will drive these companies to realize that, you want to know what, if our if we constantly are losing money on the streams, no one's buying any of this stuff, but people are buying physical media, then maybe we should probably invest in physical media and start bringing DVDs, Blu-rays back into Best Buy and Target and all these other locations. Now, granted, Walmart, Target still, I believe, offer physical media, but it needs to come back more. How you doing, Cass? Yes, happy to see you as well, and happy Thursday.
You remember most. There was one drink in the 90s that seemed to be everywhere, and that was Zima. Introduced by Coors Brewing Company in 1994,
I remember the ads for it. They really went hard on Zima. Zima, it seemed like commercials back in the 90s, especially late 90s, Zima commercials were everywhere. They really were trying to push it. And it seems like Zima, I mean, granted, they call it refreshing citrus beverage. It's almost like it was supposed to be like an alcohol filled Sprite. I think that's the best way to kind of describe it. Yeah, I missed Blockbuster days as well. Yeah. Oh, wrong button, y'all. Let's get back to this. Thank you.
It joined the big craze for clear beverages. It looked like water, tasted a little like Sprite mixed with vodka, and never quite felt like beer or soda. Plenty of people even dropped Jolly Ranchers inside to sweeten it up. For a while, it was the flavor of summer parties and late-night hangouts, before quietly disappearing.
Like I said, I've only had one girlfriend that actually drank it. Otherwise, I knew no one else that actually drank Zima. And now Zima's become kind of a joke anyway.
And becoming just another memory from the 90s. As the year 2000 drew closer, the world braced for what was called the Y2K problem.
Oh no, it's happening.
Computers had been programmed to record years with only 2 discs.
The entire basis for the Office Space movies. The Office, Cass, Jolly Rancher trick. Yep. My girlfriend did the exact same thing. She Zima and Jolly Ranchers. That was her go-to. But the Y2K, if you remember the movie Office Space, I mean that's Initech. That's exactly what they were doing there. That the technicians were doing was just doing the Y2K upgrades to software. That's all that company was doing.
Digits. And many feared that when the clock struck midnight, systems would think it was 1900 and crash. Banks, airlines, even power grids were said to be at risk. Some people stockpiled food, withdrew cash, and waited for chaos. But when the night finally arrived, the lights stayed on, the planes kept flying, and the biggest scare of the digital age simply fizzled out.
The biggest letdown in history. Nothing happened with Y2K. Oh, man. The younger generation will never know the panic buying people were doing. Some people, I mean, I know for a fact my family didn't prep, didn't expect anything to happen. We just kind of were like, something happens. But a biggest letdown because everything leading up to the year 2000 was so many people freaking out about it. Not that the news media helped in any kind of way because they definitely were talking it up for something that ended up not even occurring. Yeah, so many feared we were gonna end. Yeah. It was the biggest letdown. I mean, it's like going and seeing a movie, get all that build up, and then it's like, resolved with no conflict. It's like a handshake at the end of the movie because, it's just the biggest letdown. It's so much build up, and then it was nothing. But, still kind of funny, especially like all the software. Computers were always being tagged with Y2K compliant or Y2K ready. The advisement of before the time changes on your computer, make sure you shut your computer off before the time switch. It's like, well, your computer's still going to function. Your computer's not just going to suddenly burst into flames because it passed 2000. It's just going to, the date's just going to reset. It just, I mean, yeah. Yeah, Cass, it was just a letdown.
The Windows 95 3D maze wasn't just a screensaver. It became a show that people actually watched. Red brick walls stretched into endless corridors. Different floating objects drifted by, and a smiling emoji waited at the end of every run before it all began again.
All I kept thinking was, where's the bad guys for Wolfenstein 3D? I mean, that's exactly what that... I mean, it used the exact same functionality as Wolfenstein 3D, but just for a screensaver. But who remembers screensavers? Not many people today use screensavers, mainly because, I mean... Okay, we're going to get into tech. The whole point of screensavers was you use these big tubes are called CRTs. And those CRTs would get burned on the surface if it had a static image. So to prevent that with computers when they weren't being used was a screensaver. I know I'm really coming off as being kind of, well, it is what it is. I have a little kitten that's deciding to be a little shit this evening, and he's knocked down a lamp. He is creating all sorts of problems. But with that said, even nowadays, that's why like OLEDs, is not good. It's good not to use an OLED screen if you have anything that's static on the screen, because they do have not necessarily burn-in, but the screen can start to lose functionality in places, so you end up getting dead pixels, which will then end up giving off a little bit of ghosting of the image because it's been burned in. And yep, we still have that technology that can happen, and OLEDs are one of them.
Couldn't control it, yet it felt oddly suspenseful, like watching a game play itself. Many of us sat there far too long, hypnotized by a simple maze that turned into one of the most memorable little features of the time.
Me being a Star Trek nerd growing up, I loved the star flyby. It was like being in a spaceship. And it was the simplest of screensavers.
AOL Instant Messenger, better known as AIM, was where so many of us spent our evenings online. Do you remember your old screen name? AIM wasn't just about messages. It had its own soundtrack. These sounds became part of daily life, tied to...
Yeah, Cass. Let's see. Wasn't into tech then, but I am. Yeah. And that's I think true for a lot of people, and it's especially with older Gen X. I mean, later Gen X, early millennial. All of us grew up before the real increase in technology and everyone having a home computer. So adoption when we were younger, I mean, it was really looked as very niche, very not nerdish in that sense, but just not something everyone was getting into. And so it really did not, a lot of people were into technology except for the stuff that was easy consumer technology. So VCRs, DVD players, Walkmans, CD Walkmans, that type of technology, but nothing compared to what we have today, where, I mean, myself, I built a Linux machine. I'm learning how to use Linux. That was always considered a very niche, nerd developer type operating system. And right now I'm streaming from Linux. I've dropped Microsoft completely and got rid of Windows. And I've been a Windows user since 3.1. So it's like I've used Windows for decades. And so it's a little bit of a learning curve switching over to a different operating system. And it is a bit of a learning curve, but I'm having more fun with my computer again that I haven't had in a very long time. I had a computer, but didn't know it then at all what I do now. Yeah. It times change, and it definitely, as we get older and we interface with things and just that basic stuff, we just start picking up. And I mean, especially as we get older, we start taking either classes or we do jobs that interface with the computer much more, and we start getting involved with it. I've started building my own computers back in 2001 was when I actually built my first PC. And then having to get the components and stuff like that. It's different back. I let's put it this way. Building a computer back in early 2000s, which much more difficult than today because you had to worry about so many parts needing to be compatible compared to nowadays, especially even in 2000, you still had the early plug and play. So not everything played nice. Not everything worked properly. It was a lot more of a roll of the dice sometimes. And you had to make sure that you were checking every component to make sure, are these going to work together? So it wasn't like you could just go onto an Amazon and do that. And I bought a lot of, I mean, if you remember a website called Newegg, I think they're still around, but they were just computer components and stuff like that. Bought a lot of components and stuff like that from Newegg. Good job with going to Linux. Thank you.
Hours of chatting with friends and maybe even that special someone you hoped would log on. Looking back, AIM was simple compared to today's apps, but it felt new, exciting, and unforgettable for anyone who grew up with it. Orbits was one of the oddest drinks of the 90s, packaged in little glass bottles that looked more like a science project than a
honestly never had Orbits, though I drank a lot of, when in the late 90s, a lot of Clearly Canadian, which is flavored water, and Sobeys in the late 90s as well.
soda. Inside was a sweet, non-carbonated fruit drink with colorful gel-like beads floating in suspension, moving slowly.
Hellhound, welcome. I thought I fell in love with a girl from RuneScape.
Like a lava lamp whenever you tilted the bottle. The flavor sounded exciting. Vanilla orange, raspberry citrus, blueberry melon. But most people couldn't get past the strange texture. Curiosity sold the first sip, but few came back for more, and Orbits soon slipped off the shelves.
I've never seen 10,000 tapes in one store.
For many of us,
Dude, Sobe and the glass bottles, you couldn't beat them. I know. I think that was one of the selling points that I loved about Sobeys back then, because it was they were glass bottles. Unlike now, they're in plastic bottles, if you can even find them, because they're not really found anymore. The other ones that are still around that I see actually at a local grocery store are Clearly Canadian. So the flavored water is still around. Recall them, never drank them though. Yeah, I never tried any of those.
a weekend evening meant a trip to Blockbuster. The aisles were lined with bright blue cases, each promising a different adventure for the night. Families wandered up and down, debating which movie would be the pick, and there was nothing better than spotting the exact film you wanted sitting in the return bin. Blockbuster wasn't just a store, it was part of our routine, a little ritual that made choosing a movie almost as fun as watching it.
For me, it was Hollywood Video. Growing up, it was less Blockbuster, and I think that had a lot to do because there was a Hollywood Video that was much closer to where I grew up than any Blockbuster. So I'm more familiar with Hollywood Videos than I am Blockbuster. Not that we didn't do Blockbuster as well, but as soon as a Hollywood Video had moved in and it was closer to us, we went and started actually doing Hollywood Video. But the thrill of the other ones, the adult only, that's by a curtain, we never had any video stores that were around us that actually had that. But, the adult section behind the curtain.
Wow chips hit the shelves in 1998 with a big promise. The same beloved snacks like Lay's, Ruffles, and Doritos, but with less fat. Frito-Lay made them with Olestra, a fat substitute that was supposed to make snacking guilt-free. For a while, shoppers were excited to give them a try. But let's be honest, even the memory of Wow chips might be enough to make your stomach uneasy. In the end,
Hellhound, a mom and pop place with a special beaded door in the back area. It seemed to not be the chains. It seemed to be mom and pop places that actually had those. But like I said, there weren't any around where I grew up. It was just the chains.
and the name promised a big reaction, just not the one anyone was hoping for.
Who remembers Olestra? Oh my goodness, yes, the whole point of anal leakage. Oh yeah, that was all over the place. The side effect of Olean, which is Olestra. Yeah, ooh, yeah. Yeah, it's fine if you ate in moderation, but the people that were going to end up buying that stuff don't eat in moderation. So yeah, they had a lot of side effects due to that. Oh, let's see. No joke, I had a Bolly book stand. Still do, but put it into storage 2 years ago, but had a customer lounge at my business. Nice.
Fashion items defined the 90s quite like starter jackets. Bright, oversized, and emblazoned with team logos, they made kids feel like part of the pros. Whether it was the Bulls, Cowboys, or Raiders, having one meant you stood out in the schoolyard. They were stylish, warm, and instantly recognizable, which made them as much a status symbol as a piece of clothing. Everyone seemed to want one, and for a while, starter jackets were simply one of the coolest things you could own. Before the internet,
Mr. Scott Awesome, how are you doing this evening? There weren't anywhere I grew up, and if you barely find any comics for sale in my town in the 90s, yeah, that was the other thing too. A lot of places, lack of comic book stores. And I had the Suns because of the colors for the starter jackets. Nice. Let's see. For me, it was Pokemon cards you had. I would get jumped for them. Yep.
Put everything at our fingertips, gaming magazines were the gateway to another world. Titles like Game Pro, Game Informer, and Electronic Gaming Monthly brought us previews of upcoming releases.
I'm surprised you didn't save Nintendo Power. I mean, that was a major gaming magazine back in the 90s. Actually, my dad ended up getting a subscription to Nintendo Power.
Cheat codes and detailed walkthroughs that felt like gold. Each new issue meant fresh excitement. Flipping through glossy pages filled with screenshots, reviews, and tips that kept us talking for weeks. Those magazines weren't just information. They were part of the thrill of being a gamer at the time. Beanie Babies were more than just stuffed animals. They were a full-blown craze. These small, soft toys with cute names and bright colors had collectors rushing to find the rare ones, convinced they'd be worth a fortune someday. McDonald's even joined the frenzy.
Oh, the Beanie Babies. Yes. Who remembers that? They're still kind of around, but the whole point, everyone thought they would be collector's items just because they would limit the runs. Yeah. How many people still have these Beanie Babies thinking they're valuable? Because unless I am completely out of the loop, I just don't see any talk about this Beanie Baby going for $500,000. I had weird old ladies riding around with them in their cars. Yeah, I definitely, out of the 90s, this was definitely a fad that did not leave the 90s. only knew a couple people that seriously collected Beanie Babies. Yeah. It definitely, I mean, I get the idea, but to be perfectly honest, I never saw and never believed any of those were ever going to get any kind of value. They're a stuffed animal. You'll get sentimental value out of them, but in the sense for collecting them and them being valuable in the future, I never saw that, never believed that was going to be true. Yeah, your grandmother collected every one of them. Wow.
With teeny beanies and Happy Meals, sending parents and kids hunting from store to store. For a few wild years, it felt like everyone had a shelf or a box filled with them. Today, most sit forgotten, but the memory of that frenzy is unforgettable. I can't skip over another drink that became a cult favorite of the era, Crystal Pepsi. Launched in the early 90s, it was Pepsi's bold attempt to shake up the soft drink market. The soda looked like water but promised the familiar cola taste, only without caffeine. The advertising was huge with flashy commercials and big expectations, but the flavor never quite lived up to the hype. People were intrigued enough to try it once, but few kept buying. Crystal Pepsi soon vanished, leaving behind one of the strangest experiments in soda history.
Growing up, I lived in a Coke family. We didn't buy non-Coke products. Seems odd. Mr. Scott Awesome saying, I don't remember Crystal Pepsi. It came and went so fast that it was almost like a blink and you miss it type situation, unless you happen to be in an area that they really were heavily marketing it. I believe they teamed up with Taco Bell or KFC. It was one of those that they teamed up with. Oh, no, correction. It was Pizza Hut. Of course, the reason for the team up was the fact that Pizza Hut and Pepsi were owned by the same parent company. So, yeah, they got intertwined. But, yeah, it was really big in the sales when it came to Pizza Hut.
Before cell phones took over, pagers or beepers were everywhere. Clipped to a belt, they buzzed or beeped and flashed a phone number, sending you racing to the nearest payphone to call back. By the mid-90s, millions of people carried them, from teenagers to doctors. Still, some parents weren't so impressed. More than a few joked that pagers were something only drug dealers used.
Never had a pager. And in fact, I did not get my first actual cell phone until 2001. So it definitely was not something that was big any time during the 90s for me. Of course, I grew up, I would say middle class, but still seemed too much like a luxury item and just never any kind of need for it. So never had a pager. Yeah, Mr. Scott Awesome. Didn't get a pager until 2005, 2006. Yeah, that seemed to be where it really started to explode. I would say it was probably about 2002, 2003 is when cell phones really started to take off. And what's funny is that every single time a new cell phone would come out, what was the advertisement? The fact that they kept getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Now it's going the opposite direction. Bigger screens, being able to have bigger screens. Now they have the foldable ones that you can fold it out, and it's like having like a mini tablet. I mean, it's just the huge cell phones and then smaller and smaller. And now we're back on the upswing again for bigger cell phones.
The truth is, for a short stretch of time, having that little gadget on your hip made you feel connected in a way nothing else could.
Oh, I got to bring that out. Sorry about that, Cass. Oh, yes, I had a pager, all the colors, codes, and my starter jacker. I was balling. Hey, you want to know what? Yeah. Let's see. I grew up fast and poor, but my grandmother did make sure I had what I thought I needed. Nice grandma. My grandparents on my dad's side were definitely more grandparents like that. But they were factory workers with good pensions and everything else. So they had more, in the sense of being a middle class grandparents. My mom's side of the family were all farmers. So they definitely made their own food. They canned, a lot. So, I grew up with city folk on one side of the family and farmers on the other side of the family. So well-rounded growing up, that's for sure. Summers with my mom's parents were working on a farm, learning how to pick crops, how to plant and harvest, and they definitely did not have a lot of technology, unlike my dad's parents, which my grandfather bought a very, very first generation, a first generation camcorder with a VHS tape, to the fact that it was 2 units. You had essentially like a VCR on a strap that you carried with wires going up to the camera itself. It's exactly how I did, no joke. Same. So you had about the same upbringing, city folk on one side of the family and farm family on the other side. Yeah. Actually, you want to know what? I would almost hope that more people would be able to experience what it actually means to live on a farm. The lower technology, going out early in the morning to actually have to do chores. It makes for a more well-rounded upbringing. Except for my dad's family, we're all farmers, and my mom's side was the average people. My mom herself never has grown up. That's the other thing too. I think those that are more inclined to have to live a little bit more off the land tend to grow up more, possibly a little bit faster, because you want to know what? You don't grow the crops, you don't eat. It's a little bit different situation compared to city folk, where it's go to a factory, punch a clock, get your paycheck, and then go to the grocery store. So let's see. Yes, I'm from the South, born and raised, forced to move to Minnesota and then back down south. Well, at least you got out of Minnesota. So congratulations on that one.
Sony's mini disc players were supposed to be the next big step after cassette tapes. The discs were small, easy to carry, and came in protective cases that felt futuristic at the time. You could record your own mixes, skip tracks instantly, and the sound quality was crisp compared to tapes. For a while, it seemed like they had everything going for them. But CDs were cheaper, MP3 players arrived soon after, and the mini disc never really caught on outside of Japan. Glamour shot studios were a sensation of the 90s, giving women and teenage girls the chance to feel like models for a day. You'd walk in, get your makeup done, pick out a few flashy outfits, and pose under dramatic lighting with teased hair and bold colors. The photos might look a little over the top now, but back then, they were treasured keepsakes, proudly framed and hung on the wall. Those pictures may look a little dated today, but they're a reminder of a fun trend that so many girls were part of. In the early days of the internet, Netscape Navigator was the browser almost everyone used. Launched in 1994, it gave people their first real taste of exploring websites.
Good old Netscape. Yeah, and then Microsoft killed it because of their monopoly acts. Yep. You want to know what? A little more technology history we're going to go through real quick. It's what led to Microsoft being sued with antitrust was because when Windows 95 came out, when they did the first upgrade, they included Internet Explorer. And since that was free and you actually had to pay for Netscape, people stopped even paying for Netscape, which ended up just stifling its business completely. And it ended up leading to its downfall. I have my glamour shot on my desk today. Right? Good memories, son.
Back when the web still felt new and exciting. For a few years, it dominated, installed on
dial-up.
millions of home computers, and it made the idea of surfing the web part of everyday life. But competition from Internet Explorer and later browsers quickly pushed it aside. Netscape didn't last, but it opened the path for everything that came after. Friday nights in the 90s often meant gathering around the TV for ABC's TGF lineup.
Friday night, and the mood is right. Gonna have some fun, show you how it's done. TGIF.
Shows like Full House, Family Matters, Sabrina the Teenage Witch, and
I remember growing up and watching these and quite enjoying them. Dinosaur, Step by Step, Perfect Strangers, Family Matters, Boy Meets World, Full House. Not a big fan of Sabrina Teenage Witch. But then I go back and kind of go, let's have a little nostalgia. Let's go watch something. And I can't watch these. It's like, these are so bad. These are so corny. And I'm thinking to myself, it's like, was this the same thing my parents were going through when these things were on and they watched them as well? Or is it just because it was the 90s? This was entertainment at the time, but just does not translate quite as well into modern viewing. But I don't think that's true, because even if you go back to even older TVs in like the 70s and stuff like that, they weren't as bad, especially the dramas. So I don't know. It may be my older eyes looking back at stuff that I watched back when I was younger. Corny, yes, but we watched them. Yes, that's true. We watched them. Otherwise, they wouldn't be so part of our childhoods and adults as they get up. And this is back again when cable, well, in the 90s, cable was a lot more prevalent today than even today. And still, a lot of people watch network TV. So your CBS, NBC, ABC still were the primaries. So everyone was usually tuning into that because, again, back when there actually was water cooler TV programming. So shared community of watching a show all at the same time and then going into school the next day or going into work. This still was going on in the early 2000s of a TV show and then discussing it. Friends of mine and I, back when the reboot of Battlestar Galactica was going on, when the reboot of Battlestar Galactica was going on, we would then all kind of watch it. And then we'd come together and speculate what was going to happen next and stuff like that. And it actually was community around watching these TV shows. And we just don't have that anymore. And I think that is a downfall because of streaming and then the binge, because they drop all these seasons all at once.
Boy Meets World turned the end of the week into a small family event. Parents and kids could sit together, laugh at the same jokes, and enjoy lighthearted stories that felt made for everyone. TGIF wasn't just television. It was part of the rhythm of the week, a reminder that Friday nights were for fun, comfort, and a little time together before the weekend began. I'd love to see in the comments which of these were your favorites, and which
very good video there. My fear is the more videos that I kind of run across, the more I'm hoping that they're not AI, but that is the problem. So this is coming from memory trails. The more and more videos that I kind of running across in this AI voice and stuff like that. Now, the entire thing could be made by a person that just doesn't want to use their own voice or is unable to, so they feed their scripts into the AI and have someone else watching it to help with their voice. But too much AI slop out there. This is one of the downsides, again, of what is going on. That's why Stranger Things was a hit. I think it started out the same. Yeah, I'll admit I've not watched a single episode of Stranger Things. I just never personally found any interest in it. but I do get how people did enjoy it, and definitely the way it started out, because Netflix, I think at that point Netflix actually understood the aspect of a water cooler, it dropping only one a week, and then left a week for people to speculate, people to talk about. And because it actually was a good TV show, especially in the beginning, is that it hooked people, that they weren't waiting to binge it at the end of the season. And unfortunately, that's not what's occurring nowadays. A lot of people are waiting until the entire season's out so they can just binge watch it. I'll admit, there's been times I've been guilty of that as well. Like, I have not watched any of House of Dragon, and I'm just like, yeah, I'll wait until the next season comes out. I'll binge it, and that's my own fault. But again, I still have a bad taste in my mouth when it comes to anything having to do with Game of Thrones because of what they did with the last season. Though I still enjoy most of Game of Thrones, but it's, I even have it in Blu-ray right behind me. I just recently picked up that last season, last two seasons of Game of Thrones. It hurt. It was bad, but especially the last season, mainly because Dan and Dave got this big deal that they were going to be able to make their own Star Wars, and I'm so glad that they sped through. HBO was going to give them a couple more seasons for Game of Thrones to actually properly end the series, but Dan and Dave wanted to get out of there so that they could go over to Lucasfilm and get their Star Wars trilogy up and running and out, and I'm so glad they did, because their trilogy was just so perfect. Oh, wait, no, that's right. They never made one. That not to the point anyway, but just, the biggest fail when it comes to modern Hollywood and giving up franchises and stuff like that really does come down to Star Wars. Star Wars really is an example of another company coming in and destroying a franchise. Disney does that so well. They did it with Marvel. They've done it with Lucasfilm, Pixar. None of those are originally Disney properties. Disney came in and then bought them afterward. Okay, so the final video we're going to go through is A1. A1 sauce was never intended for steak. This comes from Weird History Food. I always want to say Weird History of Food, but that would be wrong. Okay, here we go. A1.
Have you ever looked at a bottle of A1 sauce and thought, what are you? Steak's sidekick? Ketchup's fancy cousin? A Victorian condiment that somehow survived the Industrial Revolution? Well, if so, you're far from alone. But even though most people don't know exactly what A1 is, every steak lover has an opinion on it. And that's
okay, before we get any further, because I think they may say exactly where the origin is. Any thoughts? Is A1 an American sauce? In other words, is the origin here in the U.S. or just on the North American continent? So I'll even give it to Canada. Is this a creation of the Americas or not?
That's why. Today, we're going to try to figure out how A1 became the most controversial sauce in the world. But before we get started, be sure to subscribe to the Weird History Food channel. After that, please leave a comment and let us know what other sauces you'd like to hear about. Okay, get comfy, because this is going to be a good one. Get it? A1 sauce is that dark, tangy, mysterious bottle that lives in refrigerators across America. Usually next to the Worcestershire sauce and that one mustard that no one remembers buying. It's often called steak sauce, but that label is misleading at best and historically inaccurate at worst, because A1 wasn't originally made for steak, or even meat specifically, and it certainly...
I'll admit, I have a bottle of A1 in my fridge. It's good on burgers every so often, steaks every so often. I grew up with A1 So it's not out of the norm for me to actually have it, but how many people are actually using it nowadays? I really don't hear a lot of people asking for it.
Certainly wasn't designed to be controversial. No, A1 actually started life as something much more ambitious, a sauce meant to make everything taste better. So to understand how A1 became the condiment people argue about at cookouts, we're gonna rewind all the way back to Victorian England, which
Of course, and it's from England. I think the giveaway was a little bit with talking about the Worcestershire sauce, which no one can seem to pronounce correctly. I know I don't.
also produced Wuthering Heights, the Industrial Revolution, and Jack the Ripper. The story starts with a guy named Henderson William Brand, a British chef and entrepreneur in the early 1800s, who worked as a personal chef to King George IV. Brand developed a dark, savory sauce meant to complement, rather than overpower, rich foods by cutting through the heaviness with acidity, sweetness, and spice. So, less of a topping and more of a finishing move. In 1862, Brand debuted his creation at the International Exhibition in London.
So, like other sauces, this one's actually been around for quite some time. Let's see. Not quite 200. Well, 225 years-ish.
London, one of those massive World's Fairs where nations showed off industrial marvels, cultural achievements, and apparently sauces. Brand's sauce, for the record, was originally called Brand's International Sauce, which sounds impressive, but also like it might come with instructions. Maybe that's why at some point after its debut, it was renamed A1. The exact origin of the name A1 is a little murky, but the most common explanation is that A1 was British slang for first rate, or top quality, as in, this sauce, A1. Not a version number, not a secret code, just 19th century hype branding.
Yeah, that's one thing that I never understood too. It being British slang for top shelf, great. Of course, because I'm not British, I mean American. But on top of that, growing up with A1 always being there, I always thought for the longest time it had something to do with just like, a formulation or something. Yeah, they nailed it on the first try. But that wouldn't make any sense either because cooks usually have to go through many trials and errors to actually create this stuff. So there would be different. And on top of that, being called like F23 or F75. Yeah, that one just doesn't sound as appetizing as, let's say, A1. But of course, A1 has just become so part of the lexicon. If you look at TV show How I Met Your Mother, when Marshall goes into the corporate world and the lawyers are going steak sauce, and then you have Barney that hits like, no, A1, top notch, A1, keep up. Yeah, kind of get the joke there.
A1 was first sold in the UK. It then expanded its market into Canada and then the United States, where it
See, Canada got A1 before we did.
would undergo its most dramatic identity shift, from general purpose sauce to steak's most polarizing +1. A good sauce should be more than the sum of its ingredients, but ingredients are important. So what's actually in A1 sauce? Well, the list includes tomato puree, distilled vinegar, corn syrup, salt, raisins, spices, garlic, onion, and crushed orange puree. Yes, oranges, which surprises people, but they're important. The orange component adds subtle sweetness and citrus brightness, balancing the vinegar's acidity. It doesn't make A1 taste orangey, but it does round out the flavor and keep it from leaning too sharp or bitter. The vinegar plays a key role too. Acid helps tenderize meat slightly and brightens savory flavors. That's one reason A1.
So would A1 be actually kind of almost like using it better as a marinade for softening tougher meat? It almost sounds like it could be used as a marinade, not necessarily just as a topper.
Works well on beef, pork, and even potatoes. It cuts through fat and richness. Over the years, the formula has changed slightly, mostly to adjust sweetness levels and comply with modern food regulations. But the core flavor profile has remained remarkably consistent. Nutritionally speaking, A1 is fine. It's low in fat and low in calories, but fairly high in sodium and sugar for a condiment. It's definitely not a health food, but it's also not the villain people sometimes make it out to be. Like most
and on top of that, it's not like you're saying they're drinking the bottle of sauces. I mean, you're using it as a dip. You're using it just as a little bit of a topper. So even though it's high in sodium, I mean, how many people are putting salt on their meat anyway? So it's, yeah, okay. Instead of putting a little bit of salt, you put a little A1 on it. I mean, so what? Okay, so it affects the sodium level a little bit.
Sauces. Moderation is doing a lot of the heavy lifting. But let's face it, you can make a salad unhealthy if you toss enough sauce on there. As for competitors, A1 sits alongside other steak sauces, like Heinz 57, HP sauce, and various house-made steak sauces. Most competitors rely heavily on vinegar, tomato, and spice, but A1's use of orange puree is relatively unique, giving it that unmistakable sweet-savory balance. What really sets A1 apart from its competitors isn't just its ingredient list, it's balance. Heinz 57 leans sweeter and thicker. HP sauce is darker, maltier, and more aggressively savory. And many modern steak sauces skew smoky or spicy. A1, by contrast, lives in the middle. The sweetness
Out of the steak sauces, I'm one that actually likes the A1 sauce. Compared to other steak sauces. Other steak sauces seem to feel like it's more putting just a barbecue sauce on than something that is like A1. But I can't say that I've actually done a bunch of different steak sauces. Even with my ability to, if I wanted to have steak a little more often, I still see it as a special. So it's a lot more ground beef that I have in my diet than just like steak.
never overwhelms. The acidity hits quickly, then gets the hell out of the way. The fruit elements round out the vinegar instead of fighting it, creating a sauce that reacts to food rather than sitting on top of it. That adaptability is why A1 keeps reappearing in unexpected places, mixed into marinades, stirred into gravies, splashed onto stews, or used as a shortcut seasoning in home kitchens. It's a behind-the-scenes fixer, quietly nudging flavors into alignment, which may explain why people keep buying it, even when they swear they don't.
I'll admit it, I buy A1. Of course, I don't go through it very fast, and it will sit for a while before I either use it up or toss it because it's past its expiration date, which I watched and seen videos on the fact that you really got to watch the dates when it comes to expiration, because those dates are very deceptive.
As we mentioned before, A1 was not actually created for steak. Originally, it was marketed as a sauce for anything: meat, vegetables, leftovers, whatever you had on hand, vaguely edible or not. It was meant to enhance flavor broadly, not rescue a specific protein. The association with steak didn't really start until the mid-20th century, after the brand had been acquired by the company that would eventually become Kraft Heinz. In the 1960s, Kraft rebranded A1 explicitly as a steak sauce. Why? Because post-war America loved beef. Steak sales were booming, steakhouses were status symbols, and they were absolutely everywhere. At the same time, backyard grilling was becoming a lifestyle. Steak wasn't just dinner, it was masculinity, success, and a reason to buy your dad a novelty apron for Father's Day. And rebranding A1 as a steak sauce was a marketing masterstroke. Suddenly, this old British condiment became the official companion to America's favorite celebratory meat. Yes, a lot of that has to do with the memorable commercials the brand has produced over the years.
I just can't see myself adding A1 to different things. Maybe I should actually try that and see what it's actually like, but I just can't see, because it's supposed to be something that's going to be a flavor adder to everything, and that was the intention of A1 to begin with. It's just, I don't see myself putting it on steamed broccoli. I don't see it, instead of, let's say, putting a little bit of butter with sweet corn, to put a little bit of A1. I just don't see that. I think it's because the marketing and everything else has made it so much as a sauce for meat, specifically beef, that it just seems odd to then pair it with something else.
A1 making hamburgers taste like steak burgers to celebrity spokespeople like Andy Griffith.
Nothing better together in the whole wide world.
A1 ads have long leaned into the idea that it's the sauce for people who know what they're doing. And there might be something to that, because interestingly, there's a functional reason A1 pairs well with beef. The sauce contains acidic ingredients and antioxidants that can actually help preserve freshness and enhance flavor, especially in lower quality cuts of meat. So while purists insist that a good steak needs nothing, A1 quietly says, sure, but some steaks absolutely do. And that
So those that are buying the low quality steaks that end up burning the shit out of it, maybe instead of burning it all the way through, maybe use A1, increase the flavor and make it a little bit not as tough. I don't know, worth a try. But I at home, when I do any kind of steaks, I like thinner cuts. But of course, I'm also one that doesn't like really well done steaks. So maybe that's something to keep in mind, because the only way to actually have a good steak at home is you do have to pay a little bit more for it.
That's where the controversy begins. Among steak enthusiasts, A1 is deeply polarizing. Some reject it entirely, viewing it as an insult to good beef, while others admit, quietly, that they use it on cheaper cuts, leftovers, or well-done steaks that need a little help finding joy again. Basically, A1 exists in that space where people don't just have preferences, they have opinions.
Granted, I'm not going to use A1 on a steak if I do sauteed onions and like mushrooms, and I'm going to put it on top and create a little bit of a gravy that's going to go on a steak. Or if I go to a steakhouse and do the exact same thing, then I'm not going to order A1. But if it's just a slab of meat, depending on the quality and is when I'm actually going to use A1. But plenty of times I'll make just burgers, maybe not the highest grade of ground beef. And, you know, I'll make a air quotes steak burger by, instead of using ketchup or something like that on it, I'll use A1 in its place.
Strong ones, loud ones, usually expressed while holding tongs. Use it proudly, and someone will tell you you're wrong. Use it secretly, and, well, now everyone is happy. And the A1 debate didn't just live at backyard grills. It became cultural shorthand. Ordering steak with A1 at a restaurant quietly announced something about you. Or not so quietly if you happen to be Nicki Minaj, who went viral for demanding A1 for her Wagyu steak at the luxury steakhouse Boa. Anyway, to some diners,
some people just want to eat it, and they like the taste of it. To shame someone for wanting something on their meat, now I get it because it was a Wagyu, and that is very high quality beef. I can understand it, but again, even if it is a high quality beef that they're eating, they like the taste of that additional sauce on it. I mean, I wouldn't shame anyone for it.
A1 meant you didn't trust the kitchen.
Tell that cook you better not screw up them steaks.
To others, it meant you grew up eating well-done sirloin, and nobody was going to shame you out of upping your enjoyment by dousing it in some sauce. And this divide sharpened as steakhouse culture became more performative. Dry-aged beef, chef-driven menus, and Instagram-perfect grill marks took over. And sauces like A1 were recast as relics of an earlier era. A time when consistency mattered more than purity, and flavor was something you added regardless of the result, not something you did right the first time. Yet A1 never disappeared, because it solved a problem steak culture rarely admits. Not every steak is perfect.
A1's not expensive, but it makes any steak taste expensive.
And let's not forget that not every steak eater even wants perfection. Sometimes people want familiarity. Sometimes they want tang. Sometimes they want their food to taste like their dad made it. And A1.
And that's where it kind of goes back to with the video beginning of looking back at the 90s and what we grew up with. And definitely a flavor of growing up was the A1 sauce. Now, in my adult life, I don't use A1 nearly as much, but it does rekindle memories of growing up with using A1. So I can kind of see that being part of it, of being nostalgia for those that grew up using A1. But I definitely can see where an older generation that maybe didn't eat a lot of steaks started going out of favor, less meat consumption, not having quite as much of a memory that gets rekindled with using A1.
For better or worse, tastes like a memory. In 2014, something interesting happened. A1 quietly dropped the word steak from its name. It just became A1 sauce. This wasn't random or a deep, pleading English whisper from the ancestors to return to tradition. It coincided with a broader decline in beef consumption and a cultural shift toward more varied diets. Steak was no longer the unquestioned centerpiece of the American table, and A1 got to appease the yearning of their British ancestors and reclaim its original identity, a sauce for everything. In fact, Kraft actually began marketing A1 as a sauce for everything: pork, chicken, fish, vegetables, burgers, eggs, even Bloody Mary.
Eggs? A1 on eggs? That's almost as bad as using ketchup on eggs. Oh, I do that from time to time. Maybe I shouldn't speak. No, I see, again, I just see it too much ingrained with meat. And again, that's the marketing, the propaganda around A1 growing up. It was always just a meat sauce, specifically beef. So to see it being used in other capacities, such as eggs or chicken or something like that, I can't see putting it on, or fish, especially fish.
And according to A1 social media, fans also use it on nachos, baked potatoes, meatloaf, and yes, that's right, pumpkin seeds. Despite this reinvention, A1's popularity has declined over the years. Part of that is changing tastes. Part of it is that beef quality has improved, meaning fewer people feel the need for a flavor assist. And part of it is that it's as controversial among chefs as it is among steak lovers. Many, especially high-end chefs, openly dislike it. Some celebrity chefs have dismissed A1 as unnecessary or overpowering, particularly in fine dining. Others defend it as a nostalgic classic with a specific purpose. The divide remains. Of course, there's always more to it. A1's slow decline mirrors broader changes in how people cook and eat. Access to spices has expanded. Home cooks are more adventurous, and sauces are increasingly expected to tell a story, be it regional, artisanal, or handmade.
That's my thing. I think cooks are a little full of themselves when it comes to their food needing to tell a story. Food is, it needs to be tasty, it needs to be flavorful. Wars were fought over spices. But I just want it to taste good. It doesn't need to tell me a story. I don't need my dinner to be doing that. I just want something that's tasty. As I was saying with the A1, for me, it's nostalgia. It's the fact that was something that was used on steaks growing up. And I think that's what keeps me buying it every so often. And if I have steaks, I'll put it on there. If I get a lower, granted, honestly, if I get a lower quality beef or something like that, the ground beef, I'll put it on a burger or something like that. But even with the burgers, I'm starting to get to the point of using less bread. So I'm doing either open face, or I'm just not, or I'm getting rid of the bun altogether. The only time I'm going to use a bun with a burger is if I have my cookout or something like that. But if I'm making them at home, I just forget the bread altogether.
A1 tells a different story. It's industrial, standardized, and unapologetically old school. And yet, it has outlasted countless other, trendier condiments precisely because it never pretended to be anything else. It didn't pivot to craft. It didn't rename itself something ironic. It just stayed on the shelf, waiting for the moment someone needed it. The point is, A1 is a Victorian-era, British-born, marketing-savvy, citrus-enhanced, beef-adjacent sauce that accidentally became a cultural lightning rod. It's not just steak sauce. It never really was. It's a flavor enhancer designed to cut through richness, rescue blandness, and spark arguments at dinner tables. And honestly, that's pretty cool, because whether you love it, hate it, or only use it in secret, you know what A1 tastes like.
That's good.
And in the crowded world of condiments, that kind of identity is A1. So what do you think? And what sort of foods do you put A1 on? Let us.
I only put A1 on beef. Again, like I was saying, for me, it's just nostalgia. And there's nothing wrong with nostalgia when it comes to certain food items. There's a few items that I had growing up that were specialty, and they take a little bit longer. And one of them growing up, I can't remember the name. But what it was a ground beef ball with chopped onion and bacon balled up. And then I know, Iron, A1 on eggs. I can't do that. I don't see how people would do that, but you wanna know what? And Bloody Marys is fine. Yeah, I've seen and heard of A1 being used in Bloody Marys. But growing up, so you take the beef ball that is chopped up onion with chopped up bacon in a ground beef ball, and then you put it into a shell, a flour shell, and then you boil it to cook it. So the shell is then, and the meat is then all boiled all together. And the thing is the condiment that you actually eat with that is actually mustard, which seems really weird, but it's something that traveled over, I guess, with my dad's side of the family, which is Lithuanian. And I guess that's something that just comes from that side of the family, and had that growing up as well. How you doing, Jerry? So, but thank you, everyone. This is going to be the end of this show and this episode. Make sure you catch it on the repeat. I am your host, Drunken Emerald Arrow. Coming up on Saturday at 7 p.m. PST, back on this channel, is Insert Title Here. Then on Tuesdays at 6 p.m. PST is Nerds Covering the News. And then we'll be back here next time on the next Thursday at 6 p.m. PST for the next episode of All the Good Titles Were Taken. You can catch me coming up shortly over on Iron Oxide's channel for a Ironcast for kind of a catch-up and a recap. So we will see you. Jerry, I know. Unfortunately, your timing selected this evening, but hey, you want to know what? Go back and watch, see what you think about it, and leave comments and everything else. And we will see you next time. Have a great rest of the evening. Have a great night. Stay safe.